Hi, I'm Wendy Leynse. I'm in the Anthropology department, and I'm going to be talking to you today about a virtual exchange class that I ran and my experience with that. In the fall of 2021, I was part of an exchange. I partnered with a sociology class in Egypt as part of the GSACS program, Global Scholars Achieving Career Success, which was a grant-funded program between some of the Sunni schools and some schools in the Middle East, North Africa. And the GSACS program was basically a very intense COIL program. COIL stands for Collaborative Online International Learning. It's a way of structuring virtual exchanges that's really well thought out and very structured. It was developed by some Sunni professors, actually. Virtual exchange is sort of, I'm using that as a much sort of bigger umbrella, right? I like to say, to use virtual exchange because it can encompass a lot of ways of getting people to collaborate across cultures, really. So in the project that I did, we had collaborative readings, or rather shared readings, shared theoretical perspectives. We did Zooms. We used a shared workspace, which I would highly recommend. We used Slack. So that students could basically text each other. That was good because in Slack, the people who are organizing it can put in people's phone numbers or emails so that the students don't all have to share that with each other. We did a parallel fieldwork project, and so we had this hands-on sort of empirical kind of data that we could use to make comparisons across cultures for a shared inquiry question about inequalities in childhood that we were investigating. We had a lot of shared objectives, cross-cultural awareness building, collaboration, perspective taking, developing critical thinking, etc. I'm going to skip over the methods because I've sort of explained them. This is an example of a PowerPoint that the students made together comparing childhood inequalities in New York and Cairo. It's really good because it was an empirical kind of work, so the students felt like they were producing knowledge, and so that was more engaging to them. And because they had to communicate about it with one another, they did that mostly asynchronously, it did provide some opportunities for intercultural communication. Some challenges, you might say, what are the challenges for that? The main one was the logistics. How could you do a Zoom, anything synchronous when there's a 6-hour time difference? That was very challenging. Key is plan ahead. You might have to minimize those to do 1 or 2 in the semester, plan far ahead so that students can put it on their calendars and Zoom in at a time when they're not normally in class. Learning new technologies, things like learning how to use Slack. It's good to walk your students through that because, as you all remember from suddenly pivoting online during the pandemic, it takes a lot of energy and bandwidth to learn new technologies, and that's true for your students as well. So take some time during class to walk them through it. Language barriers, cultural power dynamics, things like that. It was good to recognize those things. When you recognize that for people in another culture, it's very meaningful. So to be able to say, we know that people tend to always speak in English and that you're going to feel like you have to speak in English, but when we can, we'll find some means of translation for you, and we just recognize that, right? Let's see here. Facilitating interaction, overcoming shyness. This was one of the issues that students, it's hard for them to break out of their shell. So maybe, allotting some time at the beginning of class, 10 minutes to send a Slack to somebody is a great way to do that. Some little intro videos talking about things that people like food and music was really good. And then thinking about time management, because to do a program like this, it does require extra time, both for the instructors and the students. So for the instructors, it entails a lot of pre-planning. I went through a whole orientation program and then spent a lot of time with my co-teacher going back and forth throughout the semester in our co-planning, which was nice because then I got to know her. And then for the students, letting them know that it might be a little bit more time commitment than a usual class. And then trying to balance that in the grading, like letting them, finding a way to have their grades reflect the amount of time they spend on this part of the class rather than on the other things in your class, because it may be just a certain segment of your class, let's say 4 to 8 weeks out of a 15-week semester, for example. Why is virtual exchange useful to QC undergrads? A lot of the students at QC cannot afford to go abroad, so it's a good alternative to study abroad. A lot of QC students are also working, and they have full-time or part-time jobs, and so it's also hard for them to get abroad. Many of them already have children, or they have family commitments, and again, hard to get abroad. So virtual exchange is a really nice way to get around that. Virtual exchange promotes personal growth, in that students can kind of break out of their shells and get a sense of kind of self-assurance in talking with others, which is really good. Critical thinking skills, understanding of diversity and perspective taking, creation of empathy. These were all really good skills that students were able to learn in this project-oriented kind of learning, which is also very engaging. And also they learned transferable skills. So when I did a feedback study later, I talked to a student, she said, yeah, I've learned to listen a little bit more closely now. She's like, I now teach in a New York City school district where there are people of all different backgrounds, and I have to really listen hard to really understand what they're saying and where they're coming from. I spoke to another student who said, yeah, doing field notes was great practice for me, because now I'm in a situation where I have to talk to people in meetings and take notes, and so note-taking was a really big skill for me. I talked to another student who said, yeah, I'm really interested in what's happening in the Middle East right now, and so I'm reading the news more attentively now, and like thinking cross-culturally from different perspectives. So these are all really good transferable skills that are useful for all students. Thank you very much. If you'd like more information or to talk to me, you can feel free to reach out and email me. Thank you.